and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. I am happy to be with you on this last Tuesday, this last day of September. Time is just flying by, but I am happy to be with you, bringing you another author interview. As I always do at the beginning of the episode, I want to remind you to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching this episode on. Helps the algorithm, gets the podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. It is greatly appreciated. Speaking of things that are greatly appreciated, all of your support is. And if you want to support the podcast and the network as a whole in a financial way, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. There you can leave me a tip, a donation, however you want to look at it. I mean, not just me. It's the podcast. It's the network as a whole, as I said. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Your support is what makes this podcast work, what helps the network. But your support, no matter what form that support takes, is greatly appreciated. Past, present, future. Thank you so much. Once again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. So how is your week going so far? It's Tuesday. It's I don't know. It's Tuesday and it's the beginning of the week. How was your weekend? Mine was fine. Busy. I had not a lot of lessons, but enough lessons to keep me busy both days. I baked a couple of loaves of sourdough bread, which is good. I still don't have the stupid process perfected. I keep trying and it's just not where I want it to be. I don't know if I'm being a perfectionist or if I just can't figure out the science. It's neither here nor there. It is what it is. We spent time on Friday night with friends who are visiting from London. I think I've mentioned them and that they love to play Phase 10. So we played a game of Phase 10, which is, of course, 10 phases, so more than 10 rounds, because if you don't get out of a round, if not everybody gets out of a round, then it's more than 10 rounds or 10 phases, however you want to look at that. I think I came in last. I usually come in last. I'm not in it for the strategy, but it was fun spending time with them, and we actually should have seen them again on Sunday, but I was not feeling well. And so I took a nap, which was amazing. I do love a good nap. But that was that's got you all caught up. And then yesterday was Monday, and now here we are at Tuesday. And I hope you're having a great week. And I hope you're ready to talk about books, because today you are listening. I am talking. However you want to look at that. I am speaking to Victoria Dowd about her book Death in the Aviary. Sorry, I was thinking I am talking, you are listening. My brain just kind of got stuck on that very silly sentence that I tried to utter. I'm speaking today with author Victoria Dowd about her book, Death in the Aviary. Let me give you the description of this book. It's actually the first in a series. New Year's Eve, 1928, in the grand residence of Ravenswick Abbey, isolated in the wilds of Dartmoor, 9 members of the household step into an ornate lift. The power fails. The lift stops. In the darkness, a single shot is fired. When the light returns, Charles Ravenswick, the heir to the Ravenswick fortune, is dead on the floor. No one could have got in or out. All have motives, and none have alibis. A year later, under the pretense of reporting on the family's infamous ravens, Sparky Charlotte Blood investigates. She finds a house haunted by suspicion and secrets. She must unravel the mystery and with it the terrible truth behind the entire Ravenswick family. Her search will not only lead her down a dangerous path, it will reveal dark secrets that lurk in her own life. And so, as you hear, that is the description of Death in the Aviary. I love that it is a locked lift mystery as opposed to a locked room mystery. Gives that trope a slightly different twist. Locked rooms are one thing, locked lift, we're going to talk about that. What are the challenges of writing a locked lift mystery? And if you're a fan of historical fiction, obviously, then this is something that you will definitely want to tune in for. But 1928, so you're in that kind of lull period. Well, you've got the Roaring '20s, but World War I is over. The 1930s and the lead up to World War II are just starting to percolate. And so we're in that spot in history, the between what we know actually is going to happen, but of course Charlotte as the main character does not know. And so we're seeing her navigate this time. We talk a little bit about that in terms of future books and how far the series might go. But I think Charlotte is a very interesting character, especially the time period, her circumstances, her situation in life. A lot of different things make her a very interesting protagonist for this series, and I am interested to find out what happens to her next, how her character arc is going to develop, and just where her story takes her, especially in terms of all of the history that is about to unfold in the world around her during this point in time. Let's go ahead and turn to the conversation with Victoria so she can tell you more about the book and the beginning of this series. Again, the book is Death in the Aviary, and the author is Victoria Dowd. Hi, Victoria. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks for being here. I'm excited to talk about the book, Death in the Aviary. But before we do that, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself so my listeners can get to know you.
Sure. So I'm Victoria Dowd. I'm a crime writer, and I have written Death in the Aviary, which is the start of a new series, which is set in the 1920s. But I've written another series, the Smart Woman's Mystery series, which there were 5 books in that series so far. And prior to that, I was a criminal defence barrister.
Okay. And see, I mean, if people hadn't realized from your accent that you are from England, the word barrister hopefully would have tipped them off.
Yes,
Um,
the ones with the wig.
yes. Oh, okay. Yes. So the barristers wear the wig. So you wore the
That's
wig.
it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
not now, obviously.
Obviously. Was that strange the first time you put it on? Or was it?
Gosh, yes, very, very strange. And back then, you had to have just basically a small man's wig because it wasn't really a profession where there were many women. So,
Okay. Yeah.
and it was made of horsehair. So it's very itchy, very uncomfortable, rather odd.
Very hot, I would imagine.
Yes, very
Yes.
hot. Not good for hair either.
Right.
So
Yes. See, now, if we weren't here to talk about the book, I would ask you 8.3 million questions to follow up, but I will spare you. So, can you give an overview of Death in the Aviary?
Well, like I say, it's set in the 1920s, 1929, and it focuses on my new character, Charlotte Blood, who is a journalist. She is, when we meet her, she is a gossip columnist, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to be a serious journalist. But to become a serious journalist as a woman in 1929 was quite difficult.
Hmm.
But she gets a chance because she is asked to go to Ravenswick Abbey on Dartmoor to investigate a kind of, I'd say, cold case, but it's only a year old, where the heir to the Ravenswick family fortune has been shot and killed, and they haven't been able to solve the mystery of how he died, or who killed him. And it's basically a locked lift mystery. So, like a locked room, but they are in a lift.
Right.
And it's a great, big, enormous, ornate Victorian lift, which large manor houses sometimes had installed, the kind of big gated ones. It's very clunky, but it's enormous because the lord of the manor, who is very ill, and disabled, can't get around the house, so this lift has been installed to move him around when he could. And it can fit quite a lot of people in it. So on the night of the murder, 9 people go in the lift. The power fails, which it does a lot in a place like that. And there's a shot. And when the lights come back up, there's a gun on the floor, and the heir to the family is dead. But there is no way of saying who it could be. So all the people in the lift, when we meet them, when Charlotte goes there a year later, kind of all bear this equal responsibility and kind of the ordeal of guilt. One of them is the murderer, but None of them know who, and there's no way of telling, or there might be. So there are some clues along the way.
Right. What was your initial inspiration for the story and the series?
Really, because I love Golden Age detective fiction. I love Agatha Christie, all that sort of period of time. And I had previously with my previous series, that was a modern day series, but it was always those kind of tropes of detective fiction. The denouement at the end, there's various red herrings, etc. And I wanted to set something in the actual time when the Golden Age detective fiction was in its heyday. So yeah, that was the main inspiration at the beginning.
I hate to admit that I am probably less familiar with the golden age of detective fiction. That this is the heyday of that, and I have read some Agatha Christie, but not a lot of Agatha Christie. Do you remember a few episodes, maybe more than a few, who knows with me, could have been, I say last week like I'm a toddler and everything was yesterday. Several episodes ago when GT Carver was on, he was talking about that he had just read, finally, starting in the pandemic, every Agatha Christie novel there was. I've read some, but I have not read much. And so I'm not that familiar with the golden age of detective novels. I know that they exist. Probably should put that on my TBR, put that on my bucket list, something, get myself more familiar with it. But I know it exists. I understand the concept. I'm grateful that there are people who continue to kind of keep that alive with other books like this, getting me interested and reminding me, hey, maybe you should check these out at some point in all of your free time. Anyway, we're going to take our first break of the episode. When we come back, we'll be talking about a secondary character, Charlotte's landlady, Mrs. C, and just a few things about her as we get back into the conversation. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Victoria Dowd. Before the break, Victoria was talking about her inspiration for the book. As we get back into this segment, I do want to give you your second and final reminder that you can go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or a donation if you want to support the podcast in a monetary fashion. You see that, of course, playing in the video next to me, but it's also going to scroll along the bottom of the episode, or along the bottom of the screen throughout the episode, just in case you need a reminder what that URL is. That is gsmcpodcast.net. And as I've said, all of your support, no matter what form that support takes, is always greatly appreciated. As I said before the break, Victoria was talking about some of her inspirations for the novel. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Victoria. And you said Agatha Christie, and Charlotte's landlady writes mysteries, and she's just referred to initially as Mrs. C. And I had a split second in my brain before everything kind of clicked into place. I was like, wait a minute, she's not saying this is Agatha Christie. Like, no, that doesn't.
Mrs. C is proving to be quite a popular character, actually. Really? I originally started writing her, just as she has to have somewhere to live, and this is her landlady. But she has a very interesting backstory, which we don't quite know all about. And it involves the fact that Charlotte has another thing that is a problem in her life, in that she's a widow. She's a very young widow. She is only 29 years old. But at that time in history, there were a lot of young widows because of the war. And the expectation, because she can't have a career, or it's very difficult for her to have a career and make money, the expectation is she will just marry someone else. And she doesn't want to do that. So she wants to keep her independence. And Mrs. C is helping her along the way with that, even though she is ostensibly just her landlady, but she might be something that her husband might have left behind for her.
And it's a little trickier because this is 1929 and Charlotte is a member of a different class of like work. She's not work. She didn't grow up working class. So there's a different level of, she's a widow. So she is expected to marry, not, do work that many other widows might have done. Like,
that's right. Yeah. She's cut off from her family because they want her to remarry. She comes from quite a high status family, and she's saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to marry just the next lord or whatever. I want to have a job and work and do an important job that, isn't just a backroom gossip columnist as she is at the moment when we meet her.
Yeah.
So she's got a lot of things that are not in her favor that she has to battle against. And that was another kind of inspiration for her as a character, because what I didn't want to do was just present the reader with, the 1920s is very beautiful. She's a kind of flapper girl sleuth, but I didn't want her to just appear as a woman who looks like she's in 1920s fancy dress, basically.
Right. Yeah.
I wanted her to be a modern woman. She's very modern for her time, and she's got all those problems that we all face. How do we get a career? How do we, navigate our way through all the different work-life balances that there are facing us? And I wanted her to be this incredibly modern woman so that it would resonate with a modern reader, not just thinking, goodness, this is, almost 100 years ago. Why would that relate to anything in my life?
Yeah, exactly. And you've mentioned many things that I think will answer this question, but what do you think will resonate most about Charlotte with readers?
I think she's at a point in her life, so she's 29, she's about to be 30. Everything she had has gone in her life. So those things that are the pillars that hold you up, her husband, who she loved deeply and thought, I'm going to have this new life in a Bloomsbury flat in London, away from the pressures of my family. And then it all falls apart because he passes away. So she's faced with the kind of problems that I think a lot of people face at that point in their life. Does she want to just have a family and marry somebody who, her family are suggesting various options, or does she want to have a career and the sacrifices she's going to have to make for that, and the pressures she comes up against? In my previous profession, it wasn't easy to, in my day, become a barrister in a male-dominated world. So she's got a lot of those kind of pressures that are against her, and a lot of judgment for her choices in life as well.
Yeah. I love that this is a locked lift mystery as opposed to a locked room mystery, but what were the challenges in writing a mystery in a very, very small space?
It's very challenging.
It's a very big lift, but it's still a small space.
When we got halfway through, oh my goodness, how is this ever going to work? So one of the challenges was, how are we going to power this? Because I had to do a huge amount of research on how do you power a lift? Dartmoor is, for people who don't know, is quite an isolated place even now. But in the 1920s, they didn't have electricity. So this was my first problem. So I had to research, how do they power these sorts of things? And they made their own electricity through hydropower. So that, they would use the water if they were a wealthy kind of family, which they are. So obviously that fails all the time, which did feed in and help my story quite a lot. But then, of course, there's just the physicality of the space. I need there to be enough suspects, so that it makes it a good mystery. But how do you get 9 people in a lift
Right.
and make it, and explain it, the space, enough to the reader so they can visualize it? So a large part of that was the fact that they keep ravens at the house, and they're the pet ravens of the family. So they have got an aviary, that is this giant kind of bird cage, and that really helped with describing the lift, because that too is shaped like a very large bird cage, and it carried on that metaphor of all the people in that house are trapped. They've all had their wings clipped because of this incident that binds them all together, that they're all caged by this. So yeah, but it was very challenging to
Yes.
get that across to the reader.
Yes, I can imagine there were moments of just, okay, maybe I should rethink the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, really, any bird cage lifts that house 9 people that I could go and visit.
Right. This is historical mystery, historical crime fiction, but it's also got a gothic element to it. So talk about deciding to add in the gothic elements.
Oh, I've always been, very attracted to the Gothic. I'm from Yorkshire originally. I've grew up loving the Brontes, Wuthering Heights, the moors there. And, I love Gothic fiction. And I really wanted to add in this kind of dark element, that there's something else in the house, or possibly something else in the house, or something else is happening. So you have that whole element, that tension that's running through the book all the time. Not only is she in this place where there is a killer, but she's also somewhere that is very other, where something could be haunting the house.
Yeah.
I love that whole kind of, Woman in Black, all those kind of books where you're on the edge of your seat the whole time and thinking, is this actually happening?
Right.
And I think that is something that really attracts me to some of the books of Agatha Christie, where, for instance, where you have things like The Pale Horse, where she makes you believe that something supernatural might be happening. And it's a very good tool for hiding clues, basically, and for making the reader think, oh, is this actually a ghost? Is this a supernatural phenomenon? Is it a witch, as she has in The Pale Horse? Of course, we know in our rational minds it can't possibly be that. But if the reader is looking over there at that a lot of the time, it tends to mask off a lot of what is actually happening.
Right. And it's actually, my schedule is, as you know, crazy, but it worked out nicely timing wise, because we're almost to October, so we're almost to that spooky Halloween season. So it's actually perfect timing for a gothic, possibly spooky, but not really like horror gross.
No,
I'm much
not too much blood in there.
much happier with spooky as opposed to the gross the gross parts of Halloween.
Yeah, I'm not one for the horror, really. More weird tales, I'd say.
Yes.
I like folklore quite a lot. The kind of eerie tales. Dartmoor, where it's set, I go there quite a lot, and it has some amazing folk stories and history, and they're not horror, but there's quite a lot of the supernatural involved.
Yeah, but I would imagine Yorkshire has its share of those kinds of tales as well, with the moors, right?
The moors, both in Yorkshire and Dartmoor, are, especially at this time of year when the light is kind of, you lose the light, and it's that special kind of moment when the light is going and the mists come down. It is very, very eerie.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Now I kind of want to go visit.
Oh, yes, do. Dartmoor's amazing. Absolutely, just astonishing, and very timeless. It wasn't difficult to write those parts of the book, because very little has changed on Dartmoor for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Wow. I ever been anywhere in England with moors? Have I ever been anywhere with moors? Not that I know of. Have I read plenty of books with moors and creepy stories and brooding? I've read Wuthering Heights. So I feel like I have this image in my head that's probably not accurate. I should Google maybe, but I don't know. My imagination is probably not what they actually look like, but they're very spooky, and they're always foggy in my imagination, and kind of wild. And I have seen them in movies, I should say. I'm going to stop rambling, and we're going to take our second break of this episode. When we come back, Victoria is going to be talking about some of the research she did for this book. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Victoria Dowd. Before the break, Victoria was talking about some of the seemingly or possibly or supernatural elements of the book, the more gothic nature of the book, and part of that is the location, the moors. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Victoria. Did you do any particular research for the book?
A lot.
Well, so, I mean, obviously lifts and how to power them.
And power. But also, I'd written a previous series that was in the modern day, and the difficulty with that was they were amateur sleuths, and it's hard to isolate people in the modern world. The main question is always, well, why don't they just telephone somebody or use the internet? You're never entirely isolated. So, there's got to be a storm, or the phones are out, or they're on an island, or something like that. So I thought, well, it would be easier to have something in the past when they didn't have access to telephones, computers, etc. But it turned out to be harder. Yes. Every tiny step of the way, I had to do research. If she walks into a room, what are the things in the room, and what kind of shoes has she got on her feet, and so I did a huge amount of research, but there's always that point where you have to stop the research and write the book. So one author I read long time ago said, nobody wants to know the make of the tank coming down the road in the historical fiction. There's just a tank coming. So there would be a lot. I use sort of X's when I'm writing the plot, and it's littered with X's, where it will be, the make of her dress, what her hair would look like at that point, and then I have to go away and research where the X's are a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which would be fascinating and so easy, I think, to go down rabbit holes. I would maybe never write the book because I was just enjoying the research.
That is a problem. 1920s fashion is just a wonderful one, and with the internet you can spend a whole day clicking on wonderful sites where people have done amazing research. But I now do some research for a book, and then I know I've got to start the book, and I kind of retrospectively do research for the specific things I need that are relevant for the book. Otherwise you can end up with files and files of stuff about I don't know, ladies' lingerie from 1929, and there's none in the book.
Right. Yes. And speaking of the internet, Charlotte is pretending to be an ornithologist to go talk about the ravens, ask questions about the ravens, and she can't just Google what the heck is an ornithologist. So she, she has an actual book.
Yeah. It is a book, I believe. It is a book that was around at the time, which has the crazy title.
Right.
Yeah, so she doesn't have access, and it's kind of like with the transport, how would she get to Dartmoor in 1929 from London?
Yeah.
And how would she navigate around there? She'd need a map. You can't, even now, it's not a very clever idea to try and navigate around just with Google Maps because the reception isn't great out there.
Yeah.
So everything was different. It's almost like going to a different planet, really, going to 1929 and trying to work out, well, what would she do from the minute she wakes up in the morning?
Yeah. Yeah.
What newspaper would she be reading? How would she get any of her information?
Yeah.
What would she eat? It's you have to know all of these things, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's been challenging.
Lots of details. How many books do you envision for the series? Do you have a number in mind?
Well, I don't know really. She could go on for quite a long time, and I would say quite a few because I see her going. Because when we meet her in book two, it's 1930, and at that point, you're sort of seeing a shift in Europe where the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany and the destabilization of Europe, and there's also the Depression.
Yep.
So there's an awful lot of history going on around her, and I do sort of think of her now when I think of another period in history. How old would Charlotte be at this point, and what would she be like in the Second World War? What would she do in the Second World War? Because by that point she will have been a professional woman who has been working quite hard in a high-level job as a reporter. So would she be sent to places that are quite dangerous? So yeah, lots of future projects for Charlotte. I'm often thinking, what would she be like in this year and this year?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be, I can see so many possibilities and directions that she could go because just the 1930s alone, so much happens. And
yeah, and lots of opportunity for her to travel more because travel was opening up at that point. And so to take her to somewhere else that isn't in England would be quite exciting. That might be quite fun.
Yeah. Your first series, you said was set in modern times. This one is set in 1929 and going forward. What draws you to writing historical fiction?
I love it. I've always loved reading it. And I love the fact that you're just immersed in a completely different time, and you're kind of learning history as well while you're reading that. But I love writing it because it is like you fall through time with her basically into this whole other world where everything is different and but somehow the same, if that makes sense. It's quite an exciting time in history as well because we know what's going to happen in the world at that point, and we can see her future, but she can't see that. So we're kind of seeing it with our eyes, but her eyes at the same time, and how to some extent they're saying, oh, thank God the First World War is over. All the bad times are behind us.
Right.
We've got the roaring 20s. Everything's wonderful. And then the bottom starts to fall out of it, and we know what's coming,
Yes, yeah, very much so. Are you currently working on the second book, and do you have a timeline for when that will be out?
I do. It's coming out next year. So I'm currently working on it now. I'm going through my second draft of it, where you think, oh, this will all be perfect, and then oh no, this bit's wrong. Oh, another bit, and it's kind of like panning for gold, really. The sieve gets finer and finer until hopefully there are no holes in it. But this one is set only a few weeks after the first one, but they've tipped over into 1930 because that was set on New Year's Eve, the first one. And this one is The Hunt for Boudicca's Tomb. So that has never been found. Historically, nobody's ever been able to find Boudicca's tomb. So it's kind of got that feel of when they discovered Tutankhamun's tomb. But this one's set in England, and there's the big opening, there's archaeologists, there's sponsors, and there are people with lots to hide. So this one is a locked tomb mystery.
Is there a curse or the
There is a
possibility of a
curse.
curse?
There is a curse.
Okay.
And basically they open the tomb, but they find more than they bargained for in there. In a tomb that has been sealed shut for nearly 2,000 years, there's a fresh body. So how does it get in there?
Yes.
Which is the problem I've had. That's the thought that I had. I start with the kind of central idea of the book, which was that opening a tomb, and then you go, oh my God, there's a dead body in here, and it's not an ancient one.
Right.
And but then I have to face the idea, well, how on earth would you get that in there? Because it's solid stone and it's never been opened for thousands of years. So that was the challenge with this book. I think I'm about there.
Okay. So locked lift, locked tomb. Are you going to try to continue that locked?
Hopefully. The spaces get smaller and smaller.
Until you're in a locked shoebox.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then the series is done because
yeah.
I really do like the concept of the locked places getting smaller. I mean, obviously I was joking about a locked shoebox. Where would the body even go? But you can do a lot of things, and I am curious to see if Victoria does keep making them smaller, or what challenges she will set for herself, because she seems to like to set challenges in her writing, at least from the two scenarios she's created for the first two books, a locked lift, a locked tomb, some other things that sound kind of challenging from a writer's perspective, but I'm intrigued, and I'm not creative enough to figure out how to set a locked mystery in something that small. I don't even think I could write a mystery, and especially a murder mystery, and have it make any sort of sense. Or it would be so obvious that people would know who the killer was from page 2, or possibly from the blurb on the back of the book. Anyway, we're going to take our final break of this episode. When we come back, what led Victoria to finally decide to write for publication? You're tuned into the GSMC Book Review podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review podcast and the conclusion of my conversation with Victoria Dowd. Before the break, we were talking about the series and potential other books and an arc for the series, and making the challenge of where a locked murder mystery could take place, etc. Let's go ahead and return to that conclusion of the conversation with Victoria. You started your career as a barrister, but what made you decide? Did you always want to write, or what made you decide now is the time to write for publication?
I did always want to write, and I had always, written short stories, things like that. But, back then, the kind of school that I went to, you couldn't really go to your careers teacher and say, I want to be a crime writer. That would be, what? No. And I had to make money. So I thought the closest I could get would be, to be a lawyer, and a criminal lawyer. So, but I was still writing when I had time. And then the thing that kind of tipped it over was I won the Gothic Fiction Prize for a short story. And that kind of convinced me maybe I could do this. so my chambers, which is where barristers kind of work, as they said I could have a sabbatical for a year to write a book. I'm still on that sabbatical now, which was about 20 years ago.
So it's going okay.
Yeah, it kind of worked out. It was okay.
Yes. From your experience, what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about writing?
Oh, read. Just read constantly. I mean, if you've got a love of literature, that helps. And I always say, to anybody starting it, you wouldn't want to try to win Wimbledon and never have seen a tennis match. Right. So, read everything and anything you can get your hands on. I read a lot of crime fiction. I love it, obviously, but I also read a lot of other fiction as well. I'm non-fiction, so I read around my genre a lot. So yeah, read a huge amount and write something really every day if you can. Doesn't have to be a lot, but it is, it is like a muscle, and if you don't use it, it's very easy to stop writing. I think, oh, not today, not today. It's like going to the gym, isn't it? You think, oh, not today, not today, not today. So try to write something. I write every day for very long hours, but a lot of it never ends up in the book. A lot of it is binned. But if you have to write, the 2,000 words to get the 200 words that will eventually go in there.
Yeah. You mentioned genres. What are some of your favorite authors?
Oh, well, obviously the Golden Age writers, so Agatha Christie, as we talked about. I love Dorothy L. Sayers and Marjorie Allingham and all those kind of writers. But I also do read modern authors as well. I love Peter Swanson. And I have just got John Banville's new book, Venetian Vespers. I really like his Strafford and Quirk series, which is absolutely brilliant. I love that he kind of elevates the crime genre, makes it quite literary. I also read quite a lot of ghost stories, actually. And I like short stories a lot as well. So I like E.F. Benson and, as we said, Susan Hill, people like that. Yeah, and I like Michelle Paver quite a lot. I like the atmosphere she creates, although that's about as scary as I get.
I understand. If people want to know more about you and your books, website and any social media that you're active on.
Yeah, I have a website, victoriadowd.com. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X, as it is now, Blue Sky, all of really.
Okay.
And the links are all there on my website.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Victoria, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you mentioned or highlighted at this time?
No, just the book is out. It's looking very pretty. I would mention the lovely, lovely cover that they have given it. This is nothing to do with me, and it's beautiful. And there is the birdcage with the raven. And my daughter noticed it's a lift as well, because it has an up and a down button on there. So, and there's a beautiful map. It is, it's everything I could have wished for that the publishers have done. And the amazing cover designer, who I think is on Instagram as One Curious Chip.
Okay.
She is very, very good, very talented. So yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw that. So yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me about the book and writing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you again to Victoria for joining me to talk about Death in the Aviary, and like I said, and writing and everything else that she talked about, that we talked about. If you are a fan of historical fiction, if you're a fan of historical crime fiction, if you're a fan of crime fiction, murder, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying here. But with a touch of the Gothic, then you definitely want to check out Death in the Aviary, especially if you like series, because this is the first in what will hopefully be, I don't know how many books, start reading and be surprised with the rest of us. But I am very interested to know what happens next with Charlotte, where her character arc is going to take her, where history is going to take her, what happens with the next mystery that is a murder in a tomb. How did that body get there? I am formulating theories that are wild and completely wrong, I am sure, but especially since I know nothing else besides the brief snippet that we got in the interview. But if this sounds intriguing to you, then definitely check this out. And if you like murder mysteries, but you are a fan of more contemporary, you're in luck, because Victoria has that series already out and complete. So you can check those out if you would rather read something that's got a little more closure than starting a series that only has one book out so far. You've got options, which is awesome. Thank you so much to Victoria, but thank you also to you for joining me for this episode. Of course, I hope you will join me for the next episode. I have returning author Yvette Davis coming. She's returning, so coming back to the podcast, we're talking about The Campaign, which is the third book in her Council trilogy. This is urban fantasy. This is the third in the trilogy, and I'm looking forward to having Yvette back on the podcast so we can talk about this. I like urban fantasy as an option in the fantasy realm. I'm always interested to see how authors write about witches, vampires, shapeshifters, whatever they've included in their world building, and how they have that coexist with the normal, mundane, non-magical, whatever word they use for the regular world, the rest of us who are not witches or wizards or vampires or shapeshifters. But all I'm trying to say is please join me for the next episode when I will be speaking to Yvette Davis about the third book in her Council trilogy, The Campaign. It's urban legend, urban fantasy. I was doing so well. It's urban fantasy, and you will enjoy the conversation. So tune into that episode. I hope you're having a great week. If you have not done so already, please do like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're either listening to or watching this episode on. If you are on social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. Love hearing from you. Come find the podcast and let me know what you have been reading, what authors that I've talked to that you've read, what authors you may want to try now that you've heard the interviews, etc. I'm nosy. Come find me. Tell me stuff. You can also leave a review. That really does help the algorithm. Positive reviews, excellent way to help the podcast and the network. So if you haven't done so already, please do leave the podcast a review. Leave your favorite authors a review. Review everything. It's great. Positive reviews. Keep that algorithm spinning and get this podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. Thank you so much for putting up with the fact that I don't have words tonight and joining me for this episode. I hope you're having a great week. I hope that the week continues to go well. October starts off in a great way, but whatever else is happening, I hope that the week, October, the year, the universe gives you plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to